So I want to start off this video by saying that I knew it. I friggin' knew it. Because depression has hit again, and I definitely saw it coming this time. I made a video last weekend about what it was like being hypomanic. Like, I just had 12 minutes of me talking while hypomanic. And in that video, I talked about how depression was coming for me. And I knew it was coming for me, but I didn't really understand or feel the consequences of that due to the hypomania. So here I am now, coming back from a lot of arguably stressful and busy things, and well, I'm depressed again. And so I kind of want to take a second and talk about what caused this episode, why it had a hypomanic state that was a little bit more intense than previous ones I've had. So yeah, I guess I'll just start from the very beginning. So in the middle of January, of 2024, there was a leak at the lab I work at. Basically, water had come pouring down the ceiling. There was a puddle of water on the floor outside of our lab door, and since I was the only one in the building at the time because it was a holiday, I called it in and then engineering fixed it. I was told that it was something that had happened with the monkey enclosure on the 5th floor of my building. I work several floors below that, and I'm like, interesting that it went all the way down. And I had cleaned up some of the ceiling tiles, washed my hands really well, and didn't think too much of that whole instance. But fast forward a couple weeks later, and I'm talking with someone who worked in the monkey enclosures up there. And he told me that a monkey who went by the name of Dexter had unscrewed its water source, and that had caused the vast leak that had sent nearly the entire building into somewhat of chaos once everyone figured out what had happened. So he then proceeded to tell me the thing that I was not happy to hear about at all. And it was that once upon a time, the monkey sneezed in his face. And so for the next 3 months after that, he had to get blood tests and stuff to make sure he didn't contract a deadly form of herpes called herpes B. And I was like, dang, dude, glad you're okay now. And again, didn't think too much of it, but this would become relevant later. So fast forward a few weeks even after that, and I was sitting with one of my friends. We were just chilling. And I was telling her the story of the leak and of Dexter causing it and everything. And then I came to the abrupt realization that the water that had come down through the ceiling that had touched my bare hands while I was cleaning up the mess, possibly, it had touched monkeys. Monkeys that could be carriers of the herpes that is deadly, according to the guy I've been talking to. So this is when I explained to you guys that I have something called obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. A lot of us have heard about it, but a lot of us also don't quite understand it as well as you should. And the thing is, before I knew I had OCD, I had a totally different idea of what OCD was compared to what it actually is. And really, without going into the friggin' DSM, because I'm in no way, shape, or form in any state to talk about DSM stuff. You basically just need to know that what the acronym means. And it's that you end up with a thought, an intrusive thought, and your brain obsesses over it, meaning it cycles and cycles and cycles and cycles. And it's horrible and awful. And in order to disprove or deal with the thought, let's say, for example, the thought is, my apartment will catch on fire because I left the stove on. You check. You have a compulsion. The compulsion does something to help you cope with the obsessive intrusive thought. So in this case, I would be going back home to check to make sure the stove is off. And it's a disorder because this is not normal. Normal brains don't do this. So basically for me, my intrusive thought quickly became, oh dear God, what if I have monkey herpes and don't even know it? And then suddenly in the next 3 months, I'm going to develop it at some point and die a horrible death. And it'll be because I just wanted to help with the freaking leak in the entire building. And I just didn't see that one coming. It was a whole thing. And so my brain started cycling on that thought. It was just obsessed with the thought that I had somehow contracted this deadly form of herpes. I was going to die. Like, for 3 days of my entire life, I was thoroughly convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, that there was a 99% chance that I contracted this disease. And I started Googling it, and Googling was not helping because it was like, it's usually fatal and all this other stuff. But at the same time, I knew that if there was actually a severe biological concern, they would have told us. But I had no way to do any checking. I know the compulsion for me, there really wasn't one that I could do. So I kind of went down this self-destructive path of coping with the symptoms I was experiencing. And I'm not going to get into that because it's not like important, but just to know I wasn't doing very well. And I really did for 3 days thought I was going to like totally die. And it was hard for me to plan anything. Like, I just recently went to an anime convention in DC back when this was happening. I was like, why even plan for it? Like, when I'm not even going to make it. Like, it was just this awful thing. And I even went to my therapist about it, and we tried doing some exposure therapy with the thought, but it didn't really work all that great. And it was just consuming my life. And that's the thing about OCD with me, is that it actually does, it does have the potential of ruining my life. And it has ruined it in the past. And I'm not sure I'll ever talk about it on this channel. Let me know if y'all are interested in that in the comments. But it really does mess up things. Like, the schizoaffective sucks too, don't get me wrong, but there's some days where OCD is the main problem. And in this case, this was the main problem. And so eventually I talked to my dad. He said, yo, Kit, I looked it up. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, since 1930, there have been 50 cases of this monkey herpes, and it's mostly done when you get scratched or bitten by a monkey that has it. And even then, sometimes you don't even get it. And I was like, what? So basically, I'd done all the wrong Googling is what I'm getting at. And there was actually no worry at all. There really wasn't a worry. And I knew that there wasn't a worry, but somehow that fact checking helped me. And it really was just the thought that if I did have it, there was treatment, like I wouldn't die, that really got me through it. Because I'm still technically in the 3-month period between when I cleaned up the stuff from the leak and now. And, so it's like, my brain's like, oh, what if you have it? You don't know it. It's just, God. But all I can say is just, frack you, Dexter. Frack you, Dexter, for all of this. So that's the stressful event that happened. And stressful things are usually what trigger my episodes. And so for the next couple days after that, probably 4 or 5 days actually, because that was on a Wednesday. Yeah, so the whole 3-day process of me thinking I was going to die. And then, so several days after that, I hit a weekend, and the weekend was like, I think it was the weekend of February 10th. And what happened to me was I had a lot to do, so much to do, because the following weekend was KatsuCon, which was the event I talked about in my Hypomanic video. And I have noticed that I do not know whether it's a cause or an effect of hypomania, but I've noticed that when I have a lot to do and then I have the energy to do all of it, I'm usually either hypomanic or about to be in hypomania. And I don't know whether me trying to do a bunch contributes to hypomania, or the hypomania is there and that contributes to me being able to do all this stuff. But either way, that happened that weekend. I had a lot to do, and I was able to do all of it and had energy to spare. And that should have been my tip off that I was slipping into hypomania, but it would still take several more days for that to happen. And I originally thought, which I think I said in my last video, that my hypomania was caused by the stress of the convention, because oftentimes in the past, the build up to a convention being super stressful, because I have to do a bunch of stuff and get a bunch of things done. I got to pack and I got to travel, and it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. But I thought that might have been it. But it was kind of weird how intense the hypomania was compared to how it's been in the past with this kind of thing, to the point where I don't even really, I don't always notice it's hypomania until I'm depressed. And so it was kind of like different this time around. And I think it was just because I was under all that stress because of the whole monkey herpes thing, for lack of a better term. And that stress, combined with the stress of the con coming up, is what caused the episode that I am in now. And really, it's kind of like sad that I can't just have something stressful happen and then not have any effects from it. And even though I'm medicated, these things still happen. I mean, before I was on meds, this was a constant thing. I was always up or always down. So medications have really changed my life and made things more manageable, which is how I'm able to make this video in the first place. Like, I'm able to, my depression isn't as bad as it could be. It's not, like, yes, it was hard for me to get out of bed this morning, and I slept a lot, and I spent a lot of time in bed, but I'm able to sit here and talk to you about my depression. I'm able to talk to you about what caused my episodes. And I think there's something to be said for that, because medication is really powerful. Treatment is really powerful. And yeah, it saved my life. And it's not just saved my life in a literal sense. It saved my life in the sense that it saved my quality of life. Because I know thanks to meds, I'm going to be able to get through this week. I know I'm going to be able to conquer this feeling. And I know that it will go away, because it always goes away. So yeah, that's the story of how I ended up hypomanic and all this other stuff. I hope that in the next few days things will get better. And it's not that I hope they'll get better. I know they will get better, because they always get better. Because it does get better. It does get better. So I'll just keep reminding myself that as I take it easy over the next few days to a week while I get through this, and then I'll be back to my usual self. So yeah, and that's the reality of mental illness. It's the reality of schizoaffective disorder, and it's more accurately the reality of a lot of people with bipolar disorder. So yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye. See you next video.